Next one, please. We already talked about the 4 freedoms. Go to the next one, please. Okay, so in my first study, I found that, I just want to make one point. New York City principals controlled 6.1% of the money spent in their schools. In Edmonton, they controlled, at the time, 92%. It's now gone up a little bit. Let's go to the next one. In my second study, after Mike Bloomberg and Joel Klein were in charge of the schools in New York City, principals now control 85% of the money spent in their schools. In Seattle, on the other hand, principals have gone down from controlling about 79% of the money in their schools to, as of 2 years ago, controlling 48% and falling. Now, the same thing happened in St. Paul, Minnesota. And the problem is that you get turnover in school board membership. You know, those of you who are on school boards deserve a giant medal. I mean, it's like the most thankless job in the world. You go to meetings till 2 in the morning. You get called names by all kinds of people. You have to listen to professional gadflies go on and on about whatever it is. It doesn't make any sense. You don't get paid. And who wants to do that for very long? So there's turnover on school boards. And after about 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you have nobody who was on the school board during the years when they studied decentralization and weighted student formula and made the decision. And the superintendent gets tired of it and says, I'm having to re-explain everything and fight every decision to a school board that doesn't understand why we are where we are and why the school performance is as good as it is. And they quit. And the school board goes out and hires somebody. Well, out of 16,000 schools in America, how many of them are decentralized? 8. So they hire somebody from the outside who has to be a person who has never worked in a decentralized district, has no idea what they're talking about, which is fine because neither does a school board. And then the whole system reverts back to a centralized form where it was. Because that's the natural human tendency, is you want to get control of things and make sure they're done right. Unfortunately, in a large organization, that's exactly the wrong tendency, because you really can't control it, and all you do is stifle appropriate responses from the principles that you'd like to have. Next, thanks. Okay. So here's what happens. Why don't we go to the next one? And I'll just quickly summarize what happens. I'll give you an example of a school in the South Bronx, but this is also a school in Boston. It's also a school in St. Paul, Minnesota, and it's also a school in San Francisco, where I've seen the exact same thing. So the principal says, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate non-teaching positions. I'll give you an example. The typical school of 2,500 high school students has 150 teachers and 150 non-teaching personnel. Many of those non-teaching personnel are credentialed teachers in non-classroom jobs. If you divide that 2,500 student school into 6 small schools of 400 students each, in the aggregate, they will have about 30 total non-teaching personnel. That means they've put an additional 120 people into the classroom. That has enabled them to take their total load down to about 105. But they're not at 105. They're at about 70. How did they get from 105 to 70? Well, what they'll do is they'll say to the teachers of English and social studies, for example, would you like to take a few extra courses, get a second credential, and each of you teach a humanities course which combines English and social studies. So we'll give you 25 students. We've been able to take our class size down from 35 or 40 to 25 by getting rid of non-teaching positions. So now you'll have a double period block of humanities with 25 students. Then we'll give you another double period block of humanities with another 25 students. So that's 50 students you have to get to know. And then you'll teach an elective with perhaps 20 students. And now your total student load is 70, not 140, not 170. It's 70 students you have to get to know. Now, the students are in class the exact same number of total minutes as before. The teachers are teaching the exact same total number of minutes as before. But now, every teacher has to get to know only half as many students as before, has to grade only half as many papers as before. And then all of these schools have introduced advisories in which a teacher has roughly a dozen students made up equally of 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders who stay together with the same teacher for all 4 years of high school. So it's a way to vertically integrate the students of the school. And then the advisors, the teachers, meet by grade level, sometimes 3 times a week, sometimes once a week. So all the 10th grade teachers meet together and they discuss every student who's demonstrated a change in their behavior pattern. Maybe they become bored and they need something more challenging. Maybe something bad has happened to their family life and they need additional support or understanding. Or maybe they just need a kick in the pants. And then the advisor, gathering all the intelligence about the 12 students for whom they have responsibility, calls the family every other week and gives them a total readout on their child. Now, the first several calls each year are informative, positive calls and build a bond of trust between the teacher and the family. So when the trouble call comes, what the teachers say to me is the parents are more than willing to hear whatever the problem is and invariably supportive because they know we're not just scapegoating their child. They know we really know their child and we really care. And I'd say to them, but here in the South Bronx, your transiency rate must be around 70%. How can you build any kind of community in these advisories with that turnover? And they will say, these teachers will say to me, well, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but last year we had 115 ninth graders, and this year 112 of them came back. I see this repeatedly. What does that tell me? It tells me that the children and their families feel so strongly attached to these schools that even while the families continue to move from one apartment to another, they're seeing to it that their child sticks with that school, and we all know that greatly enhances the likelihood of ultimate success for those children. Let's move on. I have to do this fast. Hook's going to come out any moment. Let's go to the next one, please. The accountability system in New York City. So they take all the standardized tests like you have here, the NCLB required tests, the additional district tests, summarized in user-friendly form, put on the website, sent to every parent. They have high school graduation rates summarized for each school as well as for the district, put on the website. New York City has hired a consulting firm from Great Britain that sends a 2-person team of former principals to each and every one of its 1,467 schools every year. They look at all the data. They look at how the school is using its student information system to identify the instructional needs of each child and to deliver what that child needs. They interview the administrative staff. They interview a sample of teachers, parents, and students. And they write a report that captures some of the qualitative essence that doesn't show up on standardized tests. And they give the school an overall rating. In New York City, as in Edmonton, every teacher fills out a questionnaire every year. In New York City, they're asked, do you trust your principal? Do you think your principal has good judgment? The results are published. They're there on every school website. Every student, grades 1 through 12, fills out a questionnaire every year. Do you feel safe at school? Do other children make fun of you? Do the teachers try to help you? The results are made public. Every principal fills out a questionnaire once a year. How would you evaluate the quality and responsiveness of the services that you receive from the central office staff? Public, all the data. The Chancellor's accountability team takes all of these inputs and makes up a 2-page school report card and gives them that letter grade. And then finally in the accountability system is choice, which applies to 100% of the students in New York City.